please. We are going to be live on YouTube, which we are now, so welcome to the County Plan Committee, taking place today on Tuesday the 7th of June 2022. I'm Councillor George Richardson and I'm chairing today's meeting. As I've said, we'll keep microphones turned off and phones turned off, please. I have a number of officers with us this morning who will now ask to introduce themselves, starting with Ian Croft on my right.
Good morning, Ian Croft, Committee Services.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Claire Teasdale, Principal Planning Officer.
Chris Shield, Senior Planning Officer. Graham Blakey, Principal Planning Officer.
Laura Eden, Senior Planning Officer.
Phil Harrison, Highways.
Jarvis Robinson, Highways.
Andrew Inks, Strategic Development Manager.
Thank you, everyone. We didn't want to leave you out, Andrew. Have we any apologies for our absence, please, today?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Bell, Hunt, McKeown, Shaw, Simpson and Wilson.
Thank you. Do we have any substitute members, please?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Heaviside for Councillor Bell and Councillor McGowan for Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, although Bill may have to leave to do a phone call later on. So can we agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of May 2022, please? Thank you. So we'll move straight on to the applications to be determined. Excuse me. DM/21/02990 FPA Croxdale Farms, Hetmore Farm, Het, Durham. And I think that's over to Chris, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the installation and operation of a solar farm of up to 49.9 megawatts at Croxdale Farms at Hetmore. This is the site layout plan. You can see it covers a large tract of land between Finford roundabout and the roundabout at Tersdale and Metal Bridge to the west, sitting on agricultural land to the north of Finford Lane and to the west of the East Coast Main Line. You can see on this plan to the north, I know this won't come across on the video, but there is the settlement of Het to the north there, Durhamgate to the west, Tersdale Industrial Estate to the east here, and to the south and just off is Ferry Hill. This is the aerial photograph of the site. You can see the parcels of farmland in there. As part of the original proposal, which was changed during the application process, there was a parcel of land to the south of Finford Lane, which was subsequently removed. So it's all on this land to the north of Finford Lane. Goes around the substation in here, parts of it, and you'll see later in the layout plan, we're avoiding a gas pipeline and the overhead electrical lines in this area of the site to the west. This is a view of the site from Finford Lane looking north, and this is from the western end of Finford Lane, where you can see the power lines and where there'll be a gap in the solar farm layout underneath those. And this is looking east towards the East Coast Main Line across the site, again from Finford Lane. And finally, this is looking from the roundabout at the junction of Tersdale, Finford Lane and Metal Bridge. And as you can't quite see, but the railway line is in this cutting here, and this area wouldn't be developed, and it's the land beyond that would be developed for the solar farm. We've had agreement from the applicant that they would plant up this area around the roundabout to obscure views of the site from that area. This is an indicative layout of what the solar farm will look like. You can see the areas that have been omitted due to them being public rights of way, the gas pipeline, electrical lines, but overall the blue areas are where the solar panels would be within the site. This is the indicative landscape strategy. It's quite hard to see at this scale, but there's extensive planting proposed for the site, including gapping up of the existing hedgerows, additional woodland planting to the north, and again, as we mentioned, planting to the east around the roundabout, as well as grassland planting across the whole site to replace the improved agricultural land. We've had no objections from statutory and internal Durham County Council consultees, subject to conditions where appropriate. Landscape officers have advised that development would cause harm to the character, quality and distinctiveness of the local landscape and to important views from high ground to the east. By that, we haven't got a picture because it wouldn't come across on the presentation, but we're looking at a view from Quarrington Hill, a few kilometres to the east, where you'd be looking across the site towards Spennymoor. And officers believe that would result in a conflict with County Durham Plan Policies 10 and 39. We also received objections from Croxdale Het Parish Council and Ferry Hill Town Council due to impacts to landscape and biodiversity, impact to Het Conservation Area, impact to health and well-being of residents and lack of community benefits. One letter of objection was received from a local resident raising issues of landscape harm, development in the Greenbelt, change of use from agricultural to industrial, insufficient use screening, and a suggestion that brownfield sites should be used for solar farms. Just as a quick point of clarity there, the development is not in the Greenbelt, it's quite some distance away. I think what the meaning was, it was just greenfield land. We've also received an objection from CPRE due to the landscape impact and loss of agricultural land. And as part of that, they requested that there be mitigation to ensure cyclists are protected during construction works, should it go ahead, and that there be additional mitigation for skylark and curlew bird species within the site. Those issues have been addressed as part of the application, as you'll see in the report. In summary, the application would provide a significant renewable energy source with power for up to and over 13,800 homes. There's some conflict with the numbers in the report on that because we did have a reduction in the scale of the development, but if the efficiency of the panels increases, they can develop a site for up to 49.9 megawatts within that area, and that would equate to the 13,800 homes. This would reduce dependence on fossil fuel power stations with the additional employment benefits, as well as biodiversity and landscape improvements to the site. Although changes have been made to the proposed solar farm during the course of the consideration of the application, it would still constitute development in the countryside, resulting in landscape harm, as discussed, sufficient to conflict with CDP policies 10 and 39. All of the material considerations have been taken into account in the determination of the solar farm application and found to be acceptable. Whilst it is accepted that solar farm would have an impact on the landscape, it is considered that the benefits of the development in terms of energy supply and security, support for renewable energy, biodiversity enhancement and job creation would outweigh the harm in accordance with CDP Policy 33. The proposals have generated some public interest, although quite limited in this case. Concerns expressed during regarding proposals have been taken into account and carefully balanced against the scheme's wider social, economic and public benefits. The proposed development is considered to broadly accord with the relevant policies, the County Durham Plan and relevant sections in NPPF, and we recommend it be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I don't think we've got any local members to speak and no objectors. And we have one applicant, and that is Kelsey Bolstad. So you've got 5 minutes, Kelsey, and Ian will tell you when you've got 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of our proposal to bring sustainable energy to County Durham, helping the UK to decarbonise. Lightsource BP is both a national and international leader in the funding, development and long-term management of large-scale solar projects, with many years' experience in the industrial area. We deliver responsible solar and we champion the rural community seeking mutually beneficial solutions for all. This application for a solar farm will help to significantly tackle the issues of energy security and climate change through increasing renewable energy generation while reducing carbon emissions. Over 14,000 tonnes of carbon will be saved annually, the equivalent of taking 7,000 large cars off the road. This will help Durham County Council achieve their ambitions set out in its Climate Emergency Response Action Plan. The application will also help national commitments and obligations to net zero, including those set out in the government's net zero strategy, as well as the recently published energy security strategy. The generation of solar is one of many initiatives that will play an important part in meeting the government's 2035 target of all our electricity coming from low carbon sources. If approved, in addition to the generation of homegrown and secure renewable energy, the proposed installation will provide other benefits, including over 3,900 metres of hedgerow planting to enhance the biodiversity and natural screening of the solar farm, other biodiversity enhancements including bird and bat boxes and areas of wildflower meadow, which will result in a biodiversity net gain of 155%. The proposal will also help support the long-term viability of Coxdale and Het farms and continue their agriculture operations through livestock grazing. In addition, there will be an economic benefit, including the contribution of approximately $165,000 per annum in business rates to Durham County Council. Lightsource believe in sharing the benefits of renewable energy with the wider community. Should the application be approved, we will be contributing $1,000 per megawatt through a community benefit fund. We have conducted an agricultural land classification survey, which has classified the land as grade 3B. This is classified as not the best and versatile land. However, the site still enables sheep grazing between the panels, ensuring that agricultural operations can continue. Lightsource BP carried out extensive pre-application consultation and engagement with local residents and community and other key stakeholders. The majority of written and verbal feedback we received was positive. Since submission, we've engaged with officers and submitted further details and changes to queries raised. This is an application that accords with your local plan, with your current and emerging government policies on how to achieve net zero. This is reflected in County Durham's Local Plan Policy 33 for renewable energy development, stating that the benefits have been given great weight in the decision-making process. Safe, secure and low-impact domestic energy supply has never been more of a necessity as it is today in the face of climate change and geopolitical events pushing supplies to the brink. The climate is already in trouble. The stability we all depend on is breaking, and an industrial resolution powered by sustainable forms of energy is urgently required.
You have a minute left.
Okay, thanks. The UN reiterated the message that it's truly now or never to act on climate change, stressing that the global emissions of CO2 would need to peak before 2025. Solar is now ready to act. As you're aware, after careful consideration of all the planning considerations, your officers have recommended approval for this project. Accordingly, and with need to act on climate change and energy security now, I respectfully ask members to grant planning permission in accordance with your officers' recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Does any member of the committee have a question for Kelsey? Patricia? Can you put your mic on? Or...
Yeah, this is a very large swathe of arable land. Can you tell me whether is this one of the largest ones in Durham? Because I get quite worried every time we carpet our arable land with... I agree with you on climate change, absolutely. I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't. But to me, it seems so enormous.
So to answer your first question, there is a few solar farms of this scale in County Durham. Our company has 2 solar farms approved in County Durham at present, which are being constructed within the next few years. And in terms of the use of the land, so yes, it is arable and pastoral land. And although it looks like large scale up in those photos, we have got enhanced landscaping to help with the impact of the scale of the proposal. So that's why we have a biodiversity net gain of 155%. So it's increasing the net gain over a large scale to help with the impacts of the solar farm.
And the lifetime of the farm?
So it's 40 years. So it's only temporary use of the farm. So after 40 years, we remove all the equipment from the farm and it can continue back to agriculture use.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation on this solar farm. I'd like to ask, you mentioned a lot about climate change in your speech, and it came across to me that you're trying to put the point across as it being man-made. What research have you done to find out if climate change works on a cycle rather than being predominantly man-made?
In terms of that, that's not considered in the proposal in terms of planning material considerations. So in terms of doing the climate change research, yes, in our company we do a lot of research in terms of climate change, in terms of where we source material uses and how we run calculations on how much it benefits, as I've highlighted in terms of the tonnes of carbon, family cars off the road, etc. But in terms of considerations, these are the material planning considerations which we're considering here.
Mike McGaughan.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions, if I may. The first one, it talks about additional employment benefits. Do we have firstly, do we have a figure on that? So how many local people are looking to be employed over the lifetime, or certainly per year and over the lifetime of the project? And secondly, you mentioned, or it was mentioned in the presentation, was that £1,000 per megawatt? Am I picking that up correctly? Or so what is that in relation to the yearly yield that goes into the local population? So the houses that are effectively going to be affected or benefited by this, what are we talking about in relation to? Is that £50,000 a year or £500,000 a year? Can we just have some clarity on that, please? Thank you.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, we did like an economic benefits assessment for this proposal, and it said that it came out that 100 people would be employed during construction directly, and then indirectly another 150 would be employed. And then over the lifetime of the project, we have about 10 to 15 staff that do operational maintenance and management of the solar farm. And in terms of the Community Benefit Fund, yes, so that is £1,000 per megawatt of installed capacity, which is paid to the local parish once the solar farm is up and running. And yeah, that was your question? That was answered all the question? Cool, thank you.
Any further questions at this point? No, I'll just mention, David, I'm sorry, but you can't vote on this one. You would know that. Chris, have you anything to come back on, please?
I think just briefly, Chair, on the scale of the development, as Kelsey said, the Lightsource have two approved solar farms at Sedgefield, and out at Hulham. They're both, the approved ones are similar in scale to this one, 90 to 100 hectares, which is about the scale that's required to get to that 49.9 megawatt figure, which is the ceiling before it goes to be a national infrastructure project. In terms of climate change, I appreciate members might have their own views on how that occurs, but planning policy framework indicates that climate change is happening and that there is support for projects that address it. And that's the way you need to be looking at this development from. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now over to the committee for the debate, please. Who would like to go first? Craig, well done.
Thank you, Chair. I can't see any objections to putting this forward. I know that, you know, as the planning officer stated, that there is a bit of detrimental impact in terms of the view and loss of kind of agricultural land and the effect on, but it looks like there's going to be a significant planting scheme attached to this which will help mitigate it. So I have no objections, and I'm happy to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations for approval.
Anyone else like to? Peter Malloy and then Patricia.
I'll put it on, okay?
Well, knock it off and let Peter go first, please.
Thank you, Chair. As we've seen in the report which we've read, it's a considerable amount of arable land that's been overtaken by this solar farm. I get the point over the climate change aspect of it, and it even states in the report at paragraph 171 that unacceptable landscape harm in conflict with CDP policies 10 and 39. I acknowledge that also mentions the benefits should outweigh the harm using policy 38, but we've got to consider the amount of arable land that's going to get used up. And bear in mind that we've also got to consider the state of the decarbonisation that was mentioned as well. But if we're using up so much arable land, and on this project and other projects, not just regionally but nationally, where are we going to grow our crops to feed the local population? The decrease in arable land means we'll have to seek elsewhere to feed the population, which is increasing a hell of a lot. So therefore, that means the carbon footprint will increase. So to me, this doesn't negate that, you know. So on the aspect of losing the amount of arable land, I don't think it benefits us at all, so I will be opposing this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Patricia next, please. Patricia Joplin.
He's actually said what I've said. I think that, yes, it's not that I don't agree with schemes like this, but we are a small nation. We could carpet the whole nation with these solar farms, and I think we need to be looking at all, well, we are looking at all ways of producing energy, but we now have a situation in the world where Ukraine provides all this grain all over the world and nobody can get it out because of the situation there. So we've got two conflicting things going on here. Do we look at our food security, or do we look at the carbon footprint? And I'm finding this difficult to square, to be quite frank with you. I know you might think, oh, it's over-dramatic to mention the situation in the world at the moment, but I don't think it is, because some of these things are a wake-up call, and you have to listen and take appropriate action to try and weigh up you know, I'm finding this application really difficult, I must admit, Chair. Thank you.
Who else would like to contribute? Bill Moist.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate everyone's concerns, but, you know, we're looking at this from a planning application. I too have concerns. However, I also have concerns about global warming. I think this is a very small percentage of the area of County Durham. The benefits are there to be seen. I'm not decrying other people's views. I think they're very relevant and need looking at. But I think the benefits for this far outweigh the costs. And I will be, when there is a vote called, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Sam's there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Patricia's right. It's a very, very difficult one. This, I can see both sides of the arguments. And my colleague over there is perfectly right about the agricultural land. Problem I have is that where do we stop? We already have 2 large farms in County Durham. And my fear is if this is granted and approved, will they come back in future years and wanting to expand this? Because there's plenty of fields, agricultural fields, where this one can be expanded. But I'm finding it very, very difficult to come to terms to whether to go with officer's recommendation or refusal. But I am worried on the agricultural side that we need to be more self-sufficient in this country, and by having these types of farms now, we've got to strike up an even balance here, and I think we're just moving away from the agricultural side that we need as a country. We need to be more self-sufficient.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to contribute? Well, then it's down to me to have my 2 penneth then. For those who don't know me, and there will be a few of you, I'm a farmer and I consider myself a countryman. And whereas we do need electricity, first and foremost, you've got to have food. This is twice as big as my farm, what we try and live off. We don't have an arable farm, we produce livestock. And it's food. It goes into the food chain. So if we going to take up 260 acres at least of agricultural land, that's a heck of a lot of bread, because I do know it is arable land. I've passed it on many occasions. I have a daughter who lives over on the east side, so I pass it quite regularly. And so on this occasion, I will be voting Neil, and I've only got one proposal for approval. I would need a second to that, or I would need another proposal from someone else.
I'll approve it. I'll have the second approval. Thank you.
Sorry, we've got a second to Isabel Roberts. So I think we'll go to the vote with the recommendation of approval. All those in favour of approval, please. Thank you. All those against?
You've got the casting vote.
So it comes to my casting vote. And I don't wish to go this way, but it's my opinion that we need to support agriculture and the production of food, as Patricia said, particularly in these current uncertain times. So I would vote against, and that would be a refusal. It just needs to explain what reasons we need.
So I think what's happened here is this. We've had a motion for approval that's been lost on the vote. So in order to make a determination, we would need a mover and a seconder for an alternative proposal, which would then be put to the vote again. So that's where we are now. In terms of reasons, clearly I've heard from members some reasons around landscape impact, and the report acknowledges the residual landscape harm. There's clearly a balancing exercise to be had there in connection with the benefits and whether they outweigh the landscape harm. I'm more concerned in terms of reasons that I've heard so far from members that revolve around food production and impact on agriculture, because I'm not convinced that we've got any evidence that would support that, frankly. So I'm concerned about that as a reason for refusal. I'm less concerned about landscape and visual impact.
Yes, Patricia.
Yes, I think the officer mentioned policy. Now, I can't remember the number now. I think it was 39 that this goes against. 33, was it? Right, no.
10 and 39.
10,
policies 10 and 39.
10 and 39, right, okay. So,
Okay, so I think Councillor Jopling's moving refusal on the basis of unacceptable landscape and visual impact contrary to policies 10 and 39, which is not outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. So if there's a seconder for that, it can be put to the vote.
Peter, your hand was up first. Peter Malone.
I'll second that, Chair.
Yes, Craig, you wish to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from the officer just before this vote, because we'd heard from the applicant about the argument about the loss of visual. I just want to know why, in the planning officer's opinion, was it that the damage and harm to the kind of environment and visual amenity that the kind of planting, in your opinion, kind of mitigated it? What was it? Sorry if you understand my question there.
So obviously landscape harm is quite a subjective area, and you don't necessarily, everyone agrees whether it is harmful. And the specialist landscape advisors, they're obviously looking at it a different way to other people. So they're all very aware of where the key views are, and their key impact view is from Quarrington Hill, where you're overlooking the valley, and you would see this as what is currently an arable feature, and then you would see almost a continuation of the Amazon development, and then across to Durham Gate behind it. And because the panels are at most 3 metres tall, they're almost like a carpet across, so it's not really industrialising the landscape from that distance, it's just a change of how it appears, and it's only from that one key view. So my view is that's quite low impact compared to them. They think that it's enough to be a conflict. But we're in agreement, myself and landscape officers, that in close proximity to the site, the impact is quite low, particularly once the mitigation is established. You'll hardly be able to see the panels from any of the public viewpoints, apart from the public rights of way where you're walking between them. But even there's quite a large tract either side, so you're not walking down a corridor, you're walking down a landscaped avenue almost. So that's where our difference of view was, but as we've set out in the report, and as I've mentioned here, I think the benefits outweigh that harm.
Yes, Craig.
Just to kind of follow up my own opinion is that the question that is being asked in this committee right now, from my perspective, is not whether we think solar farm beats agricultural land. The question to me is, where does this play in terms of the planning policy? And I know there's a lot of concerns about the loss of agricultural land, but ultimately I don't believe that as a committee it is our job to inform farmers on how they use their land. If there is a need for agricultural land, we wouldn't be putting solar farms up. The marketplace would be, the grain prices would dictate that everywhere in County Durham would have wheat, would have all this. But what we're seeing at the minute is we're seeing that there's a greater need at the minute for solar farms, or else this wouldn't be, or else we wouldn't see repeated applications coming forward. And I always sort of ask the question as well about how much land there is in County Durham. And you know, when you go out walking across the dales and everything like that, there's vast swathes of land that is agricultural land. And in actual fact, this, you know, it looks big, but in actual fact, it's quite a small development in terms of square footage of land that we're going to lose in County Durham. So to me, it's not about that. And I'm just concerned, Chair, that if we do, because I drive past that every day on to work, it is, you know, I know we're losing landscape value here, but it's not a nice area. I apologise to anybody that lives there. You know, you've got the electricity substation that's there, you've got the industrial estate, so I would have great concerns that if to be able to sort of reject this application because we'd lose the kind of landscape view. That is my opinion, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. I will just answer that before I bring you in, Patricia. The situation we describe as between food and electricity is already there. The actual cost of grain now has trebled. That's if you can get it. We can't afford to lose agricultural land. Now, you've just said great swathes of land in the dales. You can't plough this land in the dales. It's not agricultural land. It can't grow crops. It grows grass, and then we have what we personally call the harvest of the hills, where the lambs are sold and stock cattle and so forth. So we're already there with the cost of grain and the supply and availability and moving it around the world. And how long before, when you're moving it around the world, the prices are so astronomical. If you think food prices are high now, just wait a little while. They will really be astronomical. Patricia, sorry, I had to have me two pennies.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite bemused now because we are a democratic committee. We have voted. Now we're going on having huge discussions as to why we voted the way we do. We are here to make a decision. The decision is being made. Every time a planning application goes through that goes against the committee, we don't, how can I put it? When we lose, we don't sit here and pontificate why we've lost. We've made a decision, and the reasons I think that have been given are valid, are very valid with the way the world is at the moment. And I do understand about climate change. There's all sorts of things to weigh up, but this is not going to stop. This march on solar is not going to stop. We need to find ways that are not so invasive, in my view. And I think arable land is absolutely important at the moment, because it's not just going to affect us, it's going to affect the third world. There are lots of things to take into account when we're talking about growing grain and arable land. So I don't know why we're sitting here having a debate when the decision's already been made.
Well, yes, I agree with you, but Neil, you come in next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to be clear, the decision hasn't been made yet, so we've had a vote on a motion to approve that's been lost. So Councillor Jopling's put a rival motion forward for refusal. Someone would need to second that. Once that happens, if that happens, it can be put to the vote for refusal.
Yeah, well, Peter Malloy seconded that, Neil.
Okay. Well, let's put it to the vote.
So we have to go to the vote again then, please. All those in favour of refusal? All those against, please. So we've got the same outturn, and my casting vote is for refusal. So thank you for that, Neil. Kept us right legally, hopefully. And I'm sorry, Kelsey, but that's the way it's turned out this time. On to the next application, please. DM/21/04097/FPA, the site of former Tudor Grange Comprehensive School at Spennymoor. It's the determination of a a new 630-place primary school at the said Spennymoor. We have no registered speakers for this application. I'll now ask Chris Shields again to present, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, this is a new school and the former Tudor Grange Comprehensive School site in Spennymoor. So this is the site area. The only change from when it was previously the Tudor Grange School is the omission of a corner in the northeast here, which has been given over to the adjacent school for their use. The site is currently vacant, with the former school having been demolished approximately 10 years ago, and it's just enclosed grass at the moment. This is the aerial view. Former building was at the north of the site here, and then the playing fields to the south. All the boundary walls and fences still remain in place. Durham Road to the north of the site, and that's where the access was and would continue to be, and there's pedestrian access into the site from the west here. This is a view of the site from the northwest corner looking towards the south. Some of the original landscape, and then you can see the adjacent housing to the right. This is looking north across the site towards the site entrance at the top end, and this is where the site entrance was and will continue to be. And the new development would have the car park at the front, and then the building further into the site. This is a visualization of what the new school would look like. So it's not on this, but Durham Road is here, and the two entrances that we showed on this plan here and here continue to be in place here. So car park front with landscape remaining. Most of the trees on the current site would be retained, and you would have the building more central within the site, two-storey structure with halls. Some more visualizations of the site. This is the nursery area, a bit of the car park and more of the front. The general indication of the palette of materials there. So we've had no objections from statutory until Durham County Council consultee, subject conditions where appropriate. We have had an objection from Sport England due to the proposal representing a reduction in the available playing field space without providing an equivalent quality or quantity of playing field replacement. Now, in this case, Sport England are not a statutory consultee because the playing field is not currently being used as a playing field and hasn't been done so for more than 10 years. That means it doesn't have any status any longer. We did have 2 letters of objection from local residents raising issues of traffic and road safety, cumulative impact of the school in proximity to other schools and additional traffic journeys due to the catchment being moved from the Oxcliffe site to this site. Within those objections, it also requested that the new car park be made available to Spennymoor Football Club spectators, and that there should be traffic light control crossing for Durham Road. Now, as part of this, we removed one of the pedestrian accesses from the site, which I'll go back to the aerial. So there was going to be another access at this end, and that came straight out onto the road here, and that was the safety risk. So that was removed to improve that safety element. It's not for us to determine whether the school wants to offer up their car park for Spennymoor Football Club. They may wish to do that. It's up to them. We investigated whether the traffic light control crossing could be put in for Durham Road, but the usage would be too low. It would only be relevant for the school and therefore only at those school entry and exit hours, and that isn't enough to justify having that crossing there, so we couldn't include that as part of the scheme. In summary, the proposed development would provide a modern, efficient primary school for Spennymoor on a site that was formerly in use for education purposes, and this would be a significant benefit to the community. The development was being considered against relevant development plan policies and material considerations and was found to be acceptable. The objection received from Sport England is regrettable, but it's considered the proposed new school and associated variety of play spaces outweighs the loss of the former playing fields that could potentially have been brought back into use. That's potentially, they aren't actually going to be brought back into use as they were. The proposed development has generated some public interest, with letters of objection having been received. Concerns expressed regarding the proposal have been taken into account and carefully balanced against the benefits of the scheme in terms of modern education provision. The proposed development is considered to broadly accord with relevant development plan policies and the County Durham Plan and relevant sections of the NPPF, and we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have no local members to speak at this point, no objectors, and no supporters or applicant. So it's straight over to the committee for the debate, please. Patricia.
Chair, I'd like to move approval for this. I think it'll be of great benefit to Spennymoor. I've looked at the letter of objection with regards to parking. I think that everything that could be done has been done with regard to that. There is a large car park at the school, and I don't have an issue with this. I think it'd be lovely for the area, and yes, so I move for approval, go with the officer's decision.
Thank you. Peter Malloy.
Thank you, Chair. I represent Spennymoor Division, which is neighbouring onto this division where the school's located in Tudhoe. I haven't received any complaints or objections or support for this project. Personally, I would have liked, I've got some reservations if, could you put the aerial photograph up, please, if possible? As you see, you've got Durham Road there that it goes on to. We've mentioned Tudhoe St Charles School next to it, but if you come further down, bottom left-hand corner, you've also got King Street. Sorry, it's bottom of the picture. If you go up, yeah, bit to the edge of the photograph. Sorry, bit that down a bit. Yeah, around that vicinity, you've got King Street Primary School as well. It mentioned in the report that there would be no facility for drive-in drop-off. And as you can see on Durham Road, it's very much residential, and there's parking issues along that road, and I think those issues will be exacerbated with the school there. So I just, even though I'm not against having the school there, Spennymoor does need the school.
Yeah, they do.
It's why wasn't consideration put in to use a drive-in drop-off facility, which there seems to be enough land there, which would be helpful to local residents, and the timings of the school, how would that conflict with the two existing schools? So to alleviate as much traffic issues on Durham Road as possible.
Thank you, Peter. Chris will come back on that. David Boyes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I support this this proposal. I've sat on this committee for a long time. We've had a number of housing developments in that particular area over the last 13, 14 years. And one of the big complaints when we do deal with these is a lack of primary school places to accommodate the new housing developments. Now, this is an ideal opportunity to sort of help in that regard. I take on board what Peter's just said. Yeah, I think I was looking as well that there should be a bit more of a drop-off and a pick-up point within the scheme. It should be built in the scheme. I don't know if we can put that in as a consideration at a later date. I'm not sure. I think we need to maybe look into that. But I'm wholeheartedly in support of this particular scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to contribute? No, can you address Peter's concerns, please, Chris?
Yeah, the car park that's been provided is slightly oversized for the school itself, so it's providing more spaces than might necessarily be needed, but that's been considered acceptable. The issue with adding in parent drop-off is that encourages parents to actually drop off their children at school rather than doing the alternative, which is walking, cycling, which we are trying to encourage. The application has been accompanied by a travel plan to try and
get more people to use alternative modes of transport, bus, cycle, car, and there's provision on site for cycle storage, scooter storage, and there's bus stops right outside the school site. I know some people will still want to drive there, but we need to try and discourage that rather than encourage it. I don't know if highways want to add anything. No. There hasn't been any part of the design process where it's been requested that there be a drop-off here, and I don't think we could really add it in. If it was to be added in, you start losing more of the school site, and it's already quite constrained in terms of the sport and recreation facilities that are on there, as well as the existing car park. I don't think it's something we can add in now, and you know, I appreciate that school drop-offs are always a bit of a chaotic time, but through the travel plan and other measures, we hope to try and mitigate that slightly.
Does that satisfy you, Peter?
With regards to the drop-off and parking, yes, Chair, it was the other one on the consideration of school opening hours to conflict with the other two schools, no, with the traffic issues on Durham Road.
It's probably quite difficult to have schools operating at different hours, but it's something that could be considered. If it's only, you know, 10-minute windows, we could perhaps look at that. And the schools themselves might want to make that a policy.
Thanks for that. It's just bearing in mind there's two schools on a similar road, about three. In Spennymoor on Rock Road, you've got Whitworth Park Academy, Middleston Moor, and the Oaks. And one of the schools does have reduced opening times and closing times, but the two adjacent, the Oaks and Middleston Moor Primary School, very close in their timings, and that causes traffic issues on Rock Road. So if the timings could be looked at, I'm sure the residents would very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGaughan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think, like anything, obviously we've heard from local members that clearly there's a need for this in the area. But like anything, these type of developments, as both Pete and Dave have pointed out, you know, the devil's in the detail. And actually what Pete's saying is quite vital. You know, I appreciate what you're saying about, well, I'm sure the school could work something out. That's, personally, I don't think that's a good enough answer. At a planning committee, it needs to be a concrete, yes, we will be approaching the school to get the change, because actually a 10 or 15 minute window is vital. I represent a ward which is exactly the same as this, with 3 schools in very close proximity, and it is chaos. And I appreciate what you're saying about making people take alternative means, but going along Durham Road, primary school kids on bicycles at rush hour, I don't think is a particularly good idea. I appreciate we want people to use the public transport and other things, but to be truthful, I just think that particular point that Pete's made is vital, is to have that type of thing. And you're right that, you know, the drop-off thing is always a little bit contentious, but I do appreciate the site is slightly constrained, but it is not a tiny site. When you look at the other 2 schools, we're not talking about a minute site that hasn't got scope to a little bit greater thinking. You know, personally, I'm in favour of this development, but I do think that condition or air condition reference, either parking or the school timings, is probably vital to make an informed decision on this. Thank you.
Would we do that, Neil?
I think I'd like to hear from...
Okay. Neil wants to hear for highways, please.
I think from a car park management plan may be the way forward. I think to put in a pick up and drop off would probably need a quite significant redesign at this point, and also it leads to a lot of dead space, because I think, you know, we acknowledge that it's a 15 or 20 minute period of the day. So a car park management plan could possibly be the way forward, where part of the car park was turned over to at pick up and drop off time.
What we've got as part of the application at the moment is a travel plan, which we have included as part of the approved documents. But what we could do is ask them to revisit that and look at the operating times of the other schools and work around them as requested by Councillor Malloy, and that would hopefully address the chaos, if you like. Okay.
So Neil's nodding in agreement that can be done, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the planning officer is suggesting is just a slight tweak to the condition that controls the travel plan. So that's perfectly acceptable.
Do anybody else wish to speak, please? With that additional condition, we'll go to the vote then, please. All those in favour of approval, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we're on to the third application, which will be presented by Laura Hayden. It's the site of the former Electrolux Merrington Lane, again at Spennymoor. It's for the erection of 27 dwellings with associated infrastructure. It's a revised description at 16th of May 22 on the site of the former Electrolux Merrington Lane Industrial Estate, Spennymoor. We have one registered speaker for this application who although does not wish to speak, will be happy to answer any questions members may have. So it's over to you, Laura. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This is the application site here, outlined in red. It relates to the former Mitchinson site, comprising of a small parcel of land extending to approximately 0.7 hectares on the Merrington Lane Industrial Estate. It's located off Viners Close. Oh, if I can find the... I'm not doing very well. There. Of Viners Close in Spennymoor, and that lies on the southern edge of the town and to the south of the A688 dual carriageway. It lies adjacent to a larger site known as the former Electrolux site, and that's got outline plan and permission for a mixed-use development comprising of 425 dwellings and commercial uses. So this is the site here, the Electrolux site. So a reserve matters application relating to phase 1 of the development, comprising of 100 dwellings, is also pending determination, and the developer's intention is to build out that reserve matters application and this site in tandem as one development. So the building that formerly occupied the site is being cleared, and there's a number of restoration works have been completed by Homes England. And you've got a couple of public rights of way here that lead you back to Spennymoor Town Centre and across here. So this is just the aerial photograph of the site. You can see that the surrounding areas in mixed usage. You've got some of the industrial estate units that have remained and Thorn. You've got the adjacent Barrett's development. You've got the allotment gardens, Daisy Fields, and you've got Spennymoor Town Centre beyond. And you can see that the site's got a structural landscaping belt around the outskirts there. Okay, so here is just a couple of site photographs. To the top left is the roundabout junction with the B6288 and the C152, and access into the site would be taken off this existing arm here. The top right is looking southwest along Viners Close. You can see the newly installed Toucan Crossing, which will provide you with pedestrian footpath links to the town centre. You can see that the site has all been cleared now, and you can see the existing structural landscaping with the hedge and the tree planting. The bottom left-hand image is of the cleared Mitchinson site. Here you go, and you can see that landscape buffer beyond. And this bottom right, you can see the initial site infrastructure works that were consented under an earlier application. So you've got the roads, the footpath, and you've got the roundabout arm already installed. So turning to the proposed site plan, full planning permission sought for 27 units, an increase of 3 from what was originally proposed. It includes a mix of 1-bedroom apartments and 2- and 3-bedroom homes, including a 2 and a half-storey townhouse, and there's various detached and semi-detached options, and all properties benefit from off-street parking and enclosed rear gardens. And as I said earlier, this is the existing roundabout I showed you in photograph 1. All these initial roads have been put in by Homes England, and you would get access, and this is just the wider phase 1 development that I was referring to. So these are some examples of the proposed elevations. The material palettes will be yet to be determined, but it will be facing brickwork, tiled roof, anthracite grey windows, and there's got like contemporary brick feature detailing. So a summary of the consultation responses has been provided on this screen. In summary, there's no objection from statutory and internal consultation, subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement and the imposition of conditions and informatives where appropriate. The scheme was advertised by way of a press and site notice, but there were no responses received. And by way of an update from the committee report that's been published, we've had further discussions with the applicant with regards to the wording of the conditions. They've requested that a number of the triggers are moved back slightly into the development phase, just to ensure the smooth deliverability of the scheme. Officers have no objection to that and would request delegated authority from members to make those changes, should you be minded to approve the application. So in conclusion, whilst this is in a former employment site, it's not allocated as such within the County Durham Plan under Policy 2, nor is it allocated for housing under Policy 4, so it's a Policy 6 site. And through the course of the committee report, the overall acceptability of the scheme is being considered. It's not considered this scheme would be in conflict with Policy 6 as it lies within the built-up area for Spinneymoor. It represents a more compatible use of land. Formerly it was industrial and it was going to sit next to houses, so houses next to houses makes more sense. It makes use of previously development land, it's acceptably designed, and it wouldn't result in any issues relating to highway safety or in terms of cumulative impact. Whilst access to established bus services, does lie outside the recommended walking distance, there are no opportunities to improve it in this particular instance, given the site's constraints. And overall, when you take it in the round, given walking routes, cycling routes, it's considered that the site would perform relatively well in terms of sustainability, and no objections are raised having regard to the other benefits. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposals are acceptable, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the Section 106 agreement and the suggested conditions with that proposed amendment that I mentioned. And that's that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Now, as we've previously said, we have one registered speaker, Michelle Martin, but she doesn't wish to speak, but she will answer questions. So do any members of the committee have a relevant question at this point for Michelle? Craig.
Chair, just because this looks like it's, as you've stated, it is part of a much wider and larger housing development, and I just wanted to know if there was, could just go into a little bit of detail about the kind of additional amenities that I've no doubt will be going into this development that isn't just housing, in terms of, is there going to be any retail offer, is there going to be any kind of hospitality kind of thing, because it does almost look like it could be a village in its own aspect outside of Spinneymoor. And I just want to, I would just hope to hear that there are going to be, it's not just going to be block housing, we're going to be adding something else to it as well as part of the longer term plan for this area.
Okay, you're a funny looking Michelle, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm definitely not Michelle. So it was going to be Michelle Robinson, but unfortunately she's had to be called off elsewhere. So I'm James Hall, the agent for the application. So whilst this is an application for 27 dwellings, you're quite right that it's part of the larger former Electrolux site that the officer briefly mentioned, and that is a mixed-use development of up to 425 dwellings and also commercial uses. So tied in with the legal agreement for that original outline is a requirement for those commercial uses. So we were actually just talking about the potential for a small food shop coming down the line, and open space, recreation. Hopefully you picked up on the layout that there's what I'd call a small linear park through the site linking to the outer tree belts. There you go, the green space showed there. And then in terms of the actual design, just to let you know that we did go through quite an extensive process with your officers, like 4 design review panels, to get this right in terms of, particularly in terms of the links through to what's proposed as within this larger site, but also to get to other facilities across the town. And obviously you've heard about the schools as well, working quite hard to get people safely to those schools. So yes, it's what I'd call a sustainable mixed-use development on a former brownfield site. So in my planning policy world, that ticks a lot of boxes, and hence your own planning policy officers had no objections to this. Hopefully that answers it.
Thank you very much for that. David wants a word, please.
So I'm not sure if this is for the officer or for the applicant, and just in terms of the affordable housing provision, I've looked through the report. How is that going to be like sort of brought through, and or will any affordable housing be on this site, or will it be off site?
Yeah, I was just checking with Level. It's going to be delivered through a legal agreement, and it's Home Housing Group that's delivering those affordable units. Was that the answer you were seeking?
On this particular site, or will it be off-site?
On site, yeah. Indeed, yeah. And the reserve matters that are adjacent. So as being delivered as one, they'll be affordable. And there's actually a plan with your officer that locating each unit, exactly which units would be the affordable units.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Do you need to come back on anything, Laura, or not?
In terms of the affordable housing, so it's from paragraphs 127 onwards, but there's a 15% affordable housing requirement, so they would be delivering 5 units on site, so that would be 3 for affordable home ownership and 2 for affordable rent. And as James has just said, there'd also be affordable coming forward on the reserve matters as well, which was secured through the original outline.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if it was actually on site, because I know we've seen a lot of developments where they do the affordable housing on another particular site, but this is actually on site.
Yeah, all delivered on site, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Laura. It's now over to the committee. Paddy, you wish to go first, I think, please.
Thank you, Chair. Like I've said in the previous application, I'm a member for Spennymoor, and this is adjacent to my ward. I haven't received any objections or support. The thing that's got going for this, even though many of you may be aware or unaware, that Spennymoor has got a lot of housing development going on in the town. A major issue that we're currently having is the infrastructure, lack of, to support so much housing going on in the town. With this particular development, as I say, what's going for it, it's a brownfield site, and I can't see any objection to using that brownfield site up for housing, and hopefully future developments, a lot more affordable housing will come, because that's what's really needed in the town. So I'll support this application.
Thank you. Well, that apparently was a proposal and a seconder. Does anybody else wish to speak on this application? Doesn't look like it, so we've got a proposer and a seconder for approval. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. And that concludes today's business, which has gone over very quickly. Thank you for your attendance. Please stay still till Alan puts his finger up or his thumb up.